critical infrastructure has certainly shown vulnerabilities across the United States and indeed the world. And the lessons that we learn increasingly are troubling regarding our own posture and strength, resiliency in American critical infrastructure. So the position of this committee must be to calmly seek solutions for the American people. And you gentlemen are going to be asked some challenging questions today, because it's an emerging understanding of just how vulnerable we can be to attack when we thought perhaps we were not. I have noted through the years, as new projects have been developed in my own district, in the oil and gas industry, or petrochemical industry, LNG. I represent South Louisiana. These massive projects have the capacity to be off the grid. They have their own electrical supply, massive generators. Should power be lost, they can continue running. They have their own water, deep water wells. And they have on-premise servers, hardware systems. And I recall a study from as recently as 2019 that somewhere in over 90% of American businesses had some level of on-premise servers. And therefore, it seems to me, as a regular American with no background in cybersecurity until I came to Congress, and gentlemen like Ranking Member Cadco and others have made it a priority to push into the American narrative that we must strengthen our critical infrastructure, and our cyber security is certainly going to be an increasing area of vulnerability. Should we lose our grid, for instance, or just a large portion of our grids, 15, 20% of our grid, it's difficult to see how we would recover from that. So, Mr. Uran, am I pronouncing your name correctly?
Yes, sir.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Uran, what would be your opinion regarding, as we move forward from the federal level, to encourage private business and local government entities to develop off-grid capabilities to insulate themselves from attack and to decrease their vulnerability?
Congressman, that's a great question. I think, one very important responsibility and opportunity that exists for the federal government is through sharing of information with the private sector around the threat and what actions they can take to better protect themselves and mitigate risk. My greatest concern is that examples like the one you are sharing from your district, where you've got very remote pieces of equipment, are increasingly moving on grid, and well, I shouldn't say on grid, not power grid, onto the internet in some form or fashion. While there might not be an internet line, they're deploying cellular or other communications mechanisms so they can get real-time telemetry from those remote sites. They can troubleshoot and they can identify where the equipment may be failing or may...
So you would see that connection as a vulnerability that we need to watch?
Exactly. And so
I would concur. In the interest of time, I have one more question for you, sir. In America, we have codified into law the right to strike back if we come under fire. If you're fired upon, you identify the threat and you can return fire. And yet in the cyber realm, that's not codified into law. Mr. Uran, what's your opinion about what Congress should do about that? Should we make it legal to strike back in the cyber realm?
It's a
legitimate question.
Yes, sir. Legitimate question. I think it should remain illegal for private industry or private citizens to strike back, but there's an important role. That is one of the critical functions for the U.S. government.
Under advisement, Mr. Chairman, I yield.